Welcome back to Fan Talk. I'm David.
And I'm Simon.
And we're going to do Throwback Thursday.
Because it's Thursday,
It's Thursday.
Yeah.
It's actually Thursday, so we have to get this edited and put out today.
Yeah.
So,
come on, favorite movie, and then we'll be done. I'm just kidding.
So we started doing this where we pick a movie, we just kind of dive into it a little bit. So I was a little upset whenever we were picking favorite movies that...
We did our favorite categories last week of different movies, and check that video out. It's actually pretty funny.
And but my buddy Simon here put a movie on his list that wasn't even on mine, and it literally is one of my favorite movies of all time. I've watched it probably maybe more than any movie I've ever seen, just over and over and over, and I can't get enough of it, and that's Heat.
And you got to have the volume up full blast for the last couple scenes.
Yeah. So I'm going to dive into it. I'm going to give you some facts about the movie. I'm going to tell you some little things that are interesting about it and kind of go from there. But first of all, we're talking about Heat. It came out December 15th in 1995. Okay. And it was...
Good Christmas movie.
Yeah. Great Christmas film. This movie is star-studded. It's been known as they call it the jewel of crime films. And it's been labeled the national treasure of crime films. It's a very critically acclaimed hit. It actually cost $60 million to make, and it made $187.4 million. So profitable. It was a very profitable, successful film. But when you start diving into this cast, I'm going to just rattle off a lot of names. But if you go in and like... all these people are big name actors. There's not even the small characters in this are actors that do really big roles in other films. I mean, let's just start off with Robert De Niro. You got Al Pacino, Val Kilmer, Tom Sizemore, Jon Voight, Ashley Judd, Amy Berneman, Natalie Portman, William Fichtner, Ted Levine, Danny Trejo was in this. Henry Rollins was in this. Wes Studi, Dennis Haysbert, Tom Noonan, Hank Azaria does the voices for The Simpsons.
Half the voices, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this movie, and I could go on. There's names I left out. If any actors are watching this and say he didn't say my name, I apologize. It was star-studded. Lots and lots of good people in this film. It was obviously directed by Michael Mann. He's done films like Last of the Mohicans. He did Miami Vice movie, but he also did several Miami Vice, the original series. He did many of those episodes. Collateral, Public Enemy, The Aviator, he was behind that. Lots of big films that you guys have seen, and I'll kind of dive into the plot. It's a crime film, and so basically you got Robert De Niro. He's playing a guy named Neil McCauley, and he is a professional criminal. This guy, you would say he's a bank robber, but he doesn't just rob banks. He's a professional criminal. He does whatever makes money.
He wears suits. I mean, he's a consummate professional.
Yeah, and he has a definite tight-knit group of guys that he works with all the time. And they work together, and they take down scores, and they make good money. And so in the film, it starts off with them taking down a score in which, they leave millions of dollars in cash just because it would have took too long to get it all, and they just took all these bearer bonds because they had a way to move them,
which at the time those were untraceable securities or negotiable instruments that I don't think exist anymore, but at the time they were untraceable, which is why they took them.
And so I mean, it was a really good scene, and in that scene they had a guy working for them that hadn't worked with them before, and he ends up shooting one of the cops, which that's not really how they did business. They don't
want that kind of heat.
They don't want that kind of heat. They always the least amount of casualties. We're professionals. We're not here to shoot up the place and kill people. We're here to get the job done. And so it kind of rolls into that they're going to take care of this guy because he put him in a really bad situation, but some stuff comes up and he gets away. And that's a really kind of important part of the movie because it kind of sets up everything in motion that kind of happens. So you now have a detective who is played by Al Pacino, one of those kinds that is really into his work. Workaholic, likes catching bad guys, just can't live with the guilt of the bodies put behind these people.
And he's good at his job.
And he's really good at his job, but his life's a wreck because he's so committed to his job. And this is the guy that ends up falling on this case because there's some dead cops, and since he's a homicide detective, this now falls under his jurisdiction. And so now it becomes a cat and mouse crime drama where you've got Al Pacino and his crack team of investigators trying to track down, Robert De Niro's character Neil and his team of people,
which includes Tom Sizemore and Val Kilmer on his side.
Tom Sizemore and Val Kilmer on his side, Danny Trejo, and then there's other seedy criminals in the film, which Henry Rollins is actually one of the henchmen for, which is a lot of fun. I'm a big Henry Rollins fan. I've always enjoyed his stuff, and I like seeing him in a movie. Was great, especially one I like so much. But and basically it all winds down to there's a big score, and Neil and his team is going to take it down
and then
get out. And basically it was going to be kind of Neil's last hurrah. He was going to basically retire off of this, and he has always been somebody that doesn't have attachments. It's kind of the discipline of his job, but he's actually met a woman, and he's kind of starting to look at his buddies who are married and have lives, even though they live this kind of life.
His mantra is, don't have anything so important you can't walk away from
in 30 seconds. Yeah.
And one of the great scenes of the movie, the diner scene, where De Niro's character and him actually sit down, knowing the criminal and cop, and have a good heart-to-heart.
And so, in the film, it all works up to this last standoff. They decide it's worth the risk, and it's just everything that happens to these characters. But there's a lot of great scenes in this. But one of the good ones, which, I'm going to go into this first, actually. I did not know that a lot of this was based off of real people. So a cop from Chicago, his name was actually Chuck Frederick. He was a cop in Chicago, and he chased this guy named Neil McCauley in the 60s. And basically, Neil McCauley was a professional criminal who had done time in Alcatraz, and he had a crack team of people who'd been doing crimes, and Chuck had been chasing him for years. And they were kind of starting to get close, and this guy knew that Chuck was chasing him, and they ran into each other at a dry cleaner. And he said there was this real tense moment where, he didn't really know how it was going to go, where they're going to draw a gun and start shooting at each other right there. And he just invited him for coffee. And he said, sure. So they went across the street to the diner and sat down. And I guess it really panned out a lot like in that scene. And in that scene, basically, they're talking to each other and they're building a rapport. And they actually really kind of respect each other, because he respects the fact that he's a cop and he's doing his job.
Right.
And he respects that he's so incredibly good at what he does. And so he doesn't want it to end badly. So he's just like, hey, have you ever thought of just having this normal life? And he's kind of like, what's that? Football games and, barbecues? Is that your life? He's like, no. And you're like, it's not mine either. I take down scores. That's what I do. You catch guys like me. That's what you do. In the end, they kind of come to the agreement that in the end, if they meet each other, that they like each other, they respect each other, but they're not going to hesitate. They're both going to do their job. Yeah. And, that's his job. His job is he's a criminal. That's all he knows how to do. And these two actors had never acted together before.
De Niro and Pacino.
Yeah, and they never had the same screen time.
Great fan service to do that, too.
And they finally got these two actors together for that scene where they're sitting at the diner. And, the acting is phenomenal. It's just amazing seeing those two actors going at it. And good guy, bad guy, and it's just a great film. Some interesting facts about the movie also is like the shootout at the end of that film. Never before had they done where they actually took out real rounds, like the actual blank rounds, and fired them in that square, so you got the real sound and echo of a gun, and they recorded those sounds, and then they put them back on instead of using just normal gun sounds like stock stuff that they had.
The firearm sounds at the shootout scene at the end of the movie, the bank heist in downtown LA, is completely unlike any other shootout scene you hear, even to this day.
To this day, you're listening to it, and for somebody that has been in gun battles, you're like, wow. It sounds very realistic, especially if you got some good speakers at home and some surround sound. You feel like you're in a shootout. It's incredibly realistic. The way they're shooting, it's one of the first movies you really see a lot of realistic reloads. Like a lot of that stuff you see now in John Wick and these other movies, they really coach these actors.
There's such a backlash against the Infinite magazine.
Yeah, but in Heat, you see them, they're dropping the magazine, they're slapping the other one. You see Val Kilmer double tapping the bottom, make sure it's in, hitting the slide release, she cocks forward, and he starts popping off rounds, and you don't see them this endless magazine. It's like bang, 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 empty.
And people get shot, they go down realistically.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody gets shot, they go down. They might not be dead, but they're hurt. You know?
Somebody gets shot in the shoulder. You see him dragging his shoulder.
And he's hurt. It's not like these movies where a guy gets shot in the shoulder and he's fine 10 minutes later. No, you're more than likely your clavicle's broken. You're like in a lot of pain. You aren't using that arm, folks.
You're not carrying anything. You're not climbing anything.
No, like all these movies, stuff like that happens. It's very unrealistic. This movie had a lot of time and effort was putting into making it very believable.
It's one of the first ones really that like that, especially after the wave of 80s over-the-top action movies.
Yeah, it was one of the first movies that I remember as a younger man watching and being like, wow, that is like some just fine acting and really realistic. It was also very realistic in the way that the cops weren't just shooting back, and a lot of these movies people were like, oh, why? You know,
they're watching collaterals.
They're watching collaterals. Like if a cop shoots his gun, he has to count for every bullet. So where the bad guy can shoot and miss, doesn't matter. He's a bad guy. He's going to jail anyway. But a good guy, you got to know where your bullets are going. So if you take a shot, you know, and there was even some controversy over the shot Al Pacino uses to kill Tom Sizemore. And I would say that me personally, I would take that shot any day and twice on Sunday with the kind of gun he had and the angle. That was a turkey shoot.
And his assumed abilities.
Yeah, it's a turkey shoot. But there was actually some backlash on talk about realism where some cops were like, I don't think we took that shot. It just depends on, you know, that person, how confidence. But it was very realistic in that way too. There, like, it wasn't just, you know, cops just pumping rounds off the top of their car. You know, there's people out there. You might hit a civilian. You know, you don't do that. But that scene, a lot of people thought was mimicking the Hollywood shootout
I was gonna bring that
in
up.
2007. But the thing is it actually, I Googled again to make sure I was right. That actually happened afterwards.
It was like 97.
97, yeah. Sorry, I said 2007. 97, yeah.
Because there's also a whole stand-up routine that we used to make.
Griffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Need more cops. No, that happened in 1997, yeah.
That might have been actually a copycat idea from the movie.
Yeah.
Possibly,
and I'm sure that nobody wants us to say that, but it's possible. But, you know, and the other thing is that
because we have body armor. Because by God, we're coming out alive.
But
except for those guys.
The funny thing is like that was in real life. It was very unorganized. People really didn't know what they were doing. They were idiots.
Other than they somehow made full body armor.
Yeah, you know. But in this, the guys were very tactical and knew what they were doing. But that was like another one of those rumors about the film that was totally unheard of. Another interesting thing is the character Nate, which is played by Jon Voight, was totally based off of a real person also. There was a guy that Danny Trejo knew when he was in prison. And you guys that don't know, Danny Trejo did some serious time back in the day, and he was a boxer in prison. And this other guy he knew, and he introduced him, and so they fashioned that character Nate off of...
It was basically the handler.
Yeah, the handler was basically what he had done before he went to prison. He had done 20 years. And then afterwards he did some other films. I said like he was in The Longest Yard. And it looks like he did Reservoir Dogs also. So he went on to do some other stuff after prison as well. But this character, Nate, was actually totally based off of that character.
And one of the things I always remember from this movie, and maybe when I was a teenager didn't click on, but watching it over the years, it was like, oh my God. You know, and spoilers on a 20-something-year-old movie, but whatever. Yeah. Throwback Thursday is about spoilers.
Yeah.
Is that De Niro's character's like sole like mantra is like don't have something that you can't walk away from in 30 seconds. He walks away from the girl.
He does.
Without really much of a second thought. He does what is undoing is he cannot walk away from his desire for revenge against that guy that
the guy that that
if he walked away he would have been fine.
He'd have been fine. Yeah, so the funny thing is the discipline like he talks about, like he was disciplined.
When he loses that's when he dies.
That is about his friends. And you find out that everybody else had their wives, right? Mm-hmm. But to him it was the people he worked with. He loved them. He cared about them as much as he tried not to. He did. It's like he was always going after Val Kilmer's character. He was a gambler. He was always in trouble. He was messing up his relationship. He was trying to fix that for him. Yeah. His love was his friends. And he just couldn't let it go. And if he'd have walked away, he'd have been, like I said, he'd been away scot-free. He'd beat the system. Yeah. You know, he just couldn't let it go.
Yeah, ironically, his downfall was not following his own mantra.
Yeah. It's just a really great movie, and I really love it. It's something I've watched.
Ashley Judd and Natalie Portman, they don't share a scene because Natalie Portman is they said the drugged out or suicidal daughter of Al Pacino or stepdaughter of Al Pacino.
Yeah.
And Ashley Judd is the wife of Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer.
So they never share a scene, but they're together in a movie a few years after that, Where the Heart Is, where it takes place in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Where they had a pretty good friendship. I don't know where I thought of that.
Well, and also, a lot of people don't know this. Heat was based off of a movie that Michael Mann worked on for a TV movie in the 1980s, and it was called L.A. Takedown. And I had thought that it actually never got made, but it did get made, and it came out in the 80s. But then he remade it into the movie he intended it to be in 1995.
And if you ever see the L.A. Takedown and then compare it to the Heat, you can see what the difference acting makes. Acting quality makes.
Yeah, because I watched that scene, where they're at the diner, and it's like totally different, but it's kind of funny. It almost seems like high school kids doing a...
No offense to those actors, it's just not the level of De Niro Pacino.
It just is like watching high school kids do a duet opposed to actors acting. I mean, that's that big of a difference. But it also shows you how, actors, if people talk about they are overpaid, not really. I mean, you got to think about this movie. Almost line for line, the same scene, almost just about line for line, but yet night and day difference. So I mean, these people earn their paychecks. I mean, they work hard at their skill, and again, you could have those great actors, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and have a horrible script, and there'd still be no saving it. So it is a team effort to make a movie. It's not just actors. It's not just directors. It's producers. It's screenwriters. It's everything. They all work together to make a final product. And that final product, if you didn't have a costume designer that nailed your costumes and made it believable, so everybody's wearing blue T-shirts, it's still a stupid movie. So I mean, everything comes into play in these films. But that being said,
I was going to say, if you have exactly the same scene with De Niro and Pacino, if they're both wearing tank tops and like hula shorts or something, it's not going to have the same.
It's not going to have the same feel. No, but this movie, like I said, is 1995. It's timeless. It was recently redone. Well. Go and watch this film if you haven't seen it before. Robert De Niro and Al Pacino working against each other is fantastic. The whole cast is phenomenal. I don't think there's a single person that
I can't think of a weak spot in the movie.
Doesn't put out just an Academy Award winning performance. I mean, like some of these people, for instance, Noonan, he plays a lot of creepy characters in horror films, everything. In this movie, he just plays a guy that has information, and he's basically selling the information to Neil's character. So he'll get the job. And this guy pays him, and his payout's going to be bigger because he's going to be the guy who actually does the crime, but he gets him all the information on how to turn off the cameras, this, that, and the other, all that good stuff. And just for that actor, you're used to him kind of playing these over-the-top roles, just this real believable, interesting guy. He's talking about the internet, and he's like, the information's out there, you just got to grab it. Know how to grab it. And it's a great scene. It's like all these actors, I mean... I don't know.
There's not a weak link in the movie.
There's not, and I look back, doing some research on the film, and it was kind of interesting, because a lot of these scenes, some of them they did in 2 takes. In fact, and then some of them took hundreds. In fact, they said Robert De Niro refused to do any rehearsals for the diner scene because he wanted it to all just be this, energy. And so Robert De Niro was like, "We're just going to do it," and it took several takes, and and a lot of different angles and camera angles and stuff, and it took him a long time to get that scene. Another one, famously, was the Robert De Niro scene. Or not, no, this is the Al Pacino scene where
he's in Hank Azaria in the interrogation.
And he's like, why did I get myself in this situation? He's like, she's got a great, he's like, he just screams, which Robert De Niro has been known to do sometimes in these roles, and Pacino, I keep saying the wrong character. Al Pacino is really well known for just kind of going off the handle in some of these his acting, and just yell and go nuts, but. I guess they'd done a whole lot of takes.
And he just was fed up.
And he was just fed up, and so he just goes nuts. And Hank Azaria, you see the reaction on his face where he's startled,
That's true.
It's
That's
real.
Not acting.
That's not acting. It was that response was what they were looking for. And they're like, no, that's perfect. You know what? That's it. That's the one we're using.
Go home, Al. We're good.
Yeah, that's the take. So... And so, I mean, a lot of time was spent on this film and a lot of just great casting. But if you haven't seen this, you need to go watch it. So that was my pick for Throwback Thursday was Heat.
And just as I don't think we mentioned it before, it does have the opening action scene with the going after the armored car, and it has obviously the huge bank shootout out in the town square afterwards. Town square, it's the city.
Yeah.
But the rest of, we got an hour and a half in between that is pretty serious drama with very little action. So you don't go in thinking like, Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, don't go into this movie expecting high action. There's some high action scenes, but I would say it's more like watching a soccer game than watching a football game. There's a lot of anticipation, and then like boom, you get your a
lot of build up,
and then
the build up pays off.
Yeah, it does, and the scene at the end is fantastic, and it just keeps going after that scene. You expect it to die down completely.
The rest of it just kind of goes to the end of the movie.
Yeah, just kind of that energy stays. So, but it's a good movie.
Yeah, great one. I picked something on a very similar vein. Secret of NIMH. Okay, it's a very different
movie. You're going like the previous video. I picked it from my animated series.
Hey, you picked one of mine.
Yeah, family.
Well, actually, this was on both of our favorites.
Was it?
Yeah.
And you picked it too?
Yeah. Secret of NIMH, animated movie, a cartoon, came out in 1982. Main movie made by Don Bluth, who used to be employed by Disney, left around 1979 with another group of animators and formed their own company. They decided to go ahead and make the Secret of NIMH, which is based upon the Robert C. O'Ryan book of 1972 called Miss Frisbee and the Rats of NIMH.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there for a second because in the movie, her name is Miss
Brisby, yeah.
And they could not get the rights from the Frisbee company to use the name Frisbee. And they had already made the movie. So what they did was they had some actors come back and redub the lines, and then some other actors that had gone on other projects. They did sound editing from taking other words where they said the letter B and then splice that over the F sound. So they had to go micro edit to change.
I did not know that. Yeah. That's interesting.
The NIMH in the title stands for National Institute of Mental Health because if you don't already know the story, the lab rats, literally, being tested on by this National Institute of Mental Health for different drugs to improve how the mind works. And these rats become human-level intelligence because of that, and also a group of mice, the same thing, become human-level intelligence. They escape, most of the mice die, and they make their way out to this farm. I'm going to go into some of the differences between the movie and the book, and I'll kind of go over the plot points at the same time. In the movie, opens up with Miss Frisbee. I'm always thinking of her as Miss Frisbee, even though I've seen the movie first. Because that's what it should have been. Looking for help for her son who has pneumonia. She finds out that he can't be moved from their house, which is in the middle of the field where it's about to be plowed for the crops in the spring. At risk of him dying by being exposed to the cold air. And so through various acquaintances, she ends up finding out she needs to go see the local rats to see about moving her house, which most of the animals on the farm are kind of scared of because they're different.
Yeah.
She goes and visits them. They kind of take her in after finding out that her late husband was one of those mice that escaped with him and was one of those super intelligent mice. And then so they agreed to help her move her home, which was a cinder block. They move it over by a rock, which the tractor will go around, which would protect it. There's a bad guy, Jenner, who wants to... the subplot is the rats are tired of stealing from the farmer, electricity, food, etc., and want to go start their own civilization out in a valley. Mm-hmm. The bad guy, Jenner, doesn't have a problem with that. He wants to stay living near people and stealing all he can. And so he's trying to find a way to overthrow the leader, Nicodemus, so he can lead the rats and stay put. So he uses this move of the Frisbee house as a way of accomplishing that goal by killing Nicodemus. And eventually the captain of the guard, Justin, good guy, stops him and ends Jenner. The movie definitely has a very mystical element. There's a magical amulet. Mm-hmm. Nicodemus is presented more of as a wizard type character. And they have glowing eyes. Very mystical element. They're deep in the rats colony. They're like the plants move and stuff by themselves. And the mystical element ends up saving the day because the rat's machinery gets destroyed, and she has to use this magical amulet to lift her house out and do the whole thing herself anyway.
Yeah.
And then the rats the next morning will move off to Thorn Valley, and everyone's happy. The book, by comparison, has a lot more of the backstory of how they escaped NIM. It paints the scientists in less of an evil light like the movie does, and more of they're scientists doing their jobs, and they had no idea the rats became smart.
Yeah.
And they're not evil or anything. They're just regular scientists. They do what scientists do and stick some rats with some needles and hope that they're okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot more of the escape from NIM, and then also how they lived their life initially after that, how they came across their machinery, that they're able to, their size machinery to be able to use. They found basically like a toy maker box of toys from a guy that died, and eventually had the right size machine and machine tools that they could then go about making their own stuff.
Yeah.
There's zero mysticism or magical elements in the book. Jenner is basically an off-page character referred to as the guy that left with a group of people that were dissatisfied. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's all he has. There's no magical amulet. The rats actually... the movie is a little bit anticlimactic. They set the machinery, they move her house, they pack up their stuff out of the rose bush, and they head out to Thorn Valley.
Yeah.
There's a thing at the end where you can't tell if Justin lives or dies. It's left up ambiguous.
Yeah.
But it's not really a big deal. For us, anyway. As far as the storyline goes, it's not...
Yeah.
It doesn't really make or break the story. It's a lot more... It's a very interesting story, more about how their journey, the rat's journey, got from here to there versus a big fight scene and action.
Yeah, the book is really about telling the story of the rats of NIM, and Mrs. Frisbee is a side character, main character, but
it's your way into that world.
It's your way into the world, yeah, and you're learning about them through her and her connection with her husband, which was one of them.
Right.
And where in the movie, it is much more of a Disney-esque, magical, like,
Kid
fun,
story.
kid's tale, which I've read the book. I read the book in 4th grade. Loved it. I'd seen the movie already, and I always kind of went back to the movie as my favorite.
It's very different.
I just really enjoyed the movie. Like I said, as a kid, I remember with the broom handle going in the living room, sword fight, and pretend like I'm fighting Jenner, at the end, and I remember I even in drama, it was funny because I thought that every kid had seen this movie. When I was in high school, and for drama, we had to do a scene. We got to pick our own scenes and everything. And I did the scene with Jenner and Justin at the end, where he's just like, "That was no accident. I killed him," and they start going at it. And I did that whole scene with a buddy, and everybody was like, "What was that from? Like, you've never seen this looking at him? What's wrong with you people?" Yeah. So, but I really loved it. But
other things, changes from the book to the movie. The character of Isabella from the book is pretty much completely removed in her infatuation with Justin. Jeremy in the book, the crow, is really just a very, very minor character, mentions once or twice and then never comes back. He's greatly expanded upon in the movie, and he's added as a comic relief, which, given such a dark movie,
you needed
that. Also, the book has very little indication of the kids and the Auntie Shrew's personality. It's really just kind of there. Meanwhile, the movie, you get to see the kids are all very different personalities, and the shrew is very well still seen, and she saves the day by breaking down the tractor, which wasn't in the book. And
it's also funny because she's a shrew.
Yeah,
and her character is
very
shrewish.
Yeah. Let's see what else is there. Yeah, the movie itself has a very kind of creepy, dark element. I mean, when they're doing the sword fight, there's blood, not gory. It's definitely still very kids friendly, but I wouldn't take.
Yeah, it's not Watership Down bad, but it's still...
Yeah, I mean, it might make a 4 or 5 year old cringe, but an 8-year-old's going to love it.
Yeah.
But it is a little darker than the typical, even Disney movie. As far as, ton of actors in it, but as far as the ones that are probably going to be more well known today, Dom DeLuise is Jeremy, Shannon Doherty as Teresa, and Will Wheaton as Martin.
Will Wheaton.
Yep.
Will Wheaton. Will Wheaton.
Let's talk, why are you pronouncing the H?
Will Wheaton.
Let's talk sequels. On the movie side of things, there was Secret of NIMH 2, Timmy to the Rescue, came out direct-to-video, surprise, 1998. The 16-year wait was not worth it.
No. I didn't even watch him. I heard it was so bad I didn't even bother.
I watched it once. It's free rentals at Blockbuster kind of night.
Right?
Yeah. Timmy goes to Thorn Valley. Something about Martin being missing. No. Don't give that one a skip.
Yeah, go ahead and skip that one.
Now there are 2 book sequels. Only one should actually have one and have read it. The other one I never managed to find. I'm sure I could if I looked on Amazon nowadays. But okay, Robert C. O'Brien wrote the original. His daughter, Jane Leslie Conley, if I'm pronouncing it right, wrote the two sequels. And so tonally, they're very, at least the one I've read, is a very much of a match for Secret of NIMH, and it is a very actually good sequel. If you want interested in reading the book to it. Roscoe and the Rats of NIMH came out in 86, a couple years after the movie. You can tell it. She obviously watched the movie and incorporated some of the elements into it, like Miss Frisbee wears a red cape now in the book. And just little things like that are just kind of brought into it to kind of tie it in, but it's still very much a sequel to the book.
Yeah.
Timmy goes to Thorn Valley. This has nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah.
There's also a 10-year difference between the two, but there's nothing. Yeah, you can see how there's be a plot. Like, okay, let's make a sequel to this. Okay, let's have Timmy go to Thorn Valley.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be there, but it has nothing to do with that. Meanwhile, he meets a rat called Roscoe, who is Jenner's son, who has the problems kind of integrating into the rat society because of who his dad was. And also, humans are about to put a dam at the top of the valley and flood it to make it a lake reservoir. Rats need to figure out how to stop that, and they have. I'm not going to go into it too deep, but yeah, they stop that and save their little civilization. Then there's R.T. Margaret and the Rats of NIMH, came out a couple years later by the same author, his daughter, and Human Kids, if I'm remember reading this right. I only found a very short synopsis online. I haven't read this one. Human kids make friends with the rats, and eventually the secret gets out. And then so humans come in to find the rats and find the colony is completely deserted in Thorn Valley. Obviously, they moved on.
Yeah.
And the kids that they were friends with, all they found was a picture, like one little picture with an arrow pointing a certain direction, and they assumed that was the direction they went. That's where the story left.
Okay.
There is a live action talk in the works. Or reboot, that should probably be a live action style, probably like Jungle Book style, if they're going to go that way with it. It's been in development since 2015, so it's kind of entering a bit of development, hell. It keeps popping up every couple of years. It's like, oh yeah, this is on the slate to do. And right now, the Russo brothers are currently attached as executive producers on the project.
Okay.
So that's something.
That is something, yeah.
The little bit of naysayers saying that they're wanting to just kind of make this into like a series and a series of movies, like kind of franchise it. And if done right, it could be okay. If just basically squeezed to death, I think it may not be necessarily needing a franchise. Maybe just do another movie and see how people feel. Mm-hmm. Maybe do a standalone movie if that works well, then go from there. But don't make an open-ended movie expecting a franchise and it tanks.
Yeah.
I think that would do the...
Well, and that's one of those, too. I have to go back to my childhood. Like, it's a good movie on its own. I don't really see the need for a remake. That being said, if it's done right, it's something I would enjoy going to. But I will say this. I'm going to be very judgmental of that movie. If it's not got the right things, that like even if they make it more like the book and less like the original movie, there's going to be things that I'm expecting to see that if I don't see...
They need to take a good balance. I'm going
to be upset.
They need to... I think they need to go a bit more realistic, like the book, but maybe keep some of the definitely character traits that were popular in the movie. And if they want to keep a mystical element to it, make it an undertone as opposed to being the magic thing that fixes everything.
Well, the plot to kill Nicodemus and like the whole sword fight and all that. I mean, it's
Jenner was a great addition to the movie as far as compared to the book. Having the amulet fix everything.
Yeah.
It's a cop-out writing-wise, in my opinion. Just going to say it. It's like, oh, we packed ourselves into a corner. Okay, that fixes everything.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, thanks. You can now write for Star Trek The Next Generation. This technology will fix it all. Okay. Now, it was made for $14 million. I'm sorry, wrong way around. It was made for $7 million and made $14 million. It wasn't considered a financial success at the time, but it became a cult classic with VHS sales, DVD sales, the Laserdisc sales. It's definitely made its money back over the years. Has a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. So basically, everyone that's seen it pretty much likes it.
Yeah.
Now, going back to Don Bluth, formerly of Disney fame, he was an animator there, made his own company. He did NIMH, and then this company went bankrupt because it didn't make its money back originally, at least at first. He did Dragon's Lair game. Back on the old computer days.
Okay.
And then he teamed up with Spielberg and did American Tail, Land Before Time.
Okay.
And started making some serious movies.
Yeah.
And became basically, he was the anti-Disney of the 80s.
Okay.
Like, he made the quality movies, animated movies of the 80s. Meanwhile, Disney was like stuck making, Dark Cauldron or Black Cauldron
Black
and
Cauldron.
Oliver and Company, those kind of Great Mouse Detective. Meanwhile, Bluth had American Tail, Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Thumbelina, Secret of NIMH.
Yeah.
You can see where the quality scripts were versus like the Disney just pumping out stories.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's one of the things I always said when I was a kid growing up. There was tons of films that I loved, like animated movies, and very few of them were Disney.
Because our time period growing up was that early 80s where it was dominated by him.
Yeah, and that's the thing I always thought was interesting is because, like Disney films, they got really good with my brother's kids. That's when they really started getting great. Yeah, but whenever I was younger, I didn't really, I'm not saying I didn't like Sleeping Beauty or Snow White, but they were old. And
even the 70s ones, Jungle Book was not that great.
Yeah.
Robin Hood was not, they even copied the same animation from Jungle Book and back and forth, but those movies were not that great.
Not that great, but then you go into, The Secret of NIMH, Land Before Time. Now, a lot of the sequels weren't so great, but the first two were fantastic.
American Tail. Five Will Goes West.
Yeah, Five Will Goes West.
He wasn't responsible for the sequels on any of these, but he started them.
Yeah, and this is like a lot of those films that were
Anastasia, All Dogs Go to Heaven. Then he joined Fox Animation and he did Anastasia,
which was great.
And then his downfall, his last movie he made, Titan AE.
See, which I love Titan AE. I love that movie.
I did not know he made it.
I didn't know he made
it. But now
movie.
that now I knew that, I'm like thinking like the animation styles and themes in Titan AE. I'm like I could directly like see the progression from Secret of NIMH, American Tail, or All Dogs Go to Heaven. I can see that style all the way through to Titan AE.
I love Titan AE. In fact, that's one of those films that I thought about doing at some point as a movie that just didn't get its proper credit.
It didn't get any money.
It just didn't do well, and I often wonder why. Because you go back and watch Titan AE if you like animated movies. It's great. It's a good story. The characters are likable and lovable.
I need to go back and see
what had a good soundtrack. I love the soundtrack.
I want to go back and take a deeper look onto that one, see why it failed. Is it just bad timing, or if there's this? I remember it being good, but also it's been 15 years since I've seen it, so I want to go back and see what people point at as why it failed so much. But yeah, he hasn't worked in movies since. He's done a couple other projects, but that's been it for movies. I kind of like to see him come back and try again.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, so back to the story. Bluth made all these movies in the 80s. Disney took notice. They're like, this guy's outdoing us in box office and critical success and everything. Like, what are we doing wrong? We need to get back to... And so they started testing. They did Great Mouse Detective, Oliver and Company, which had some musical numbers in it, and they basically test audiences, everything else. They started figuring out, like, we need to go back to fairy tales. We need to go back to, like, source material people know, and we need to go back to basically making these musicals. And so they put all that together and released a little movie called Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
And then that started the Disney Renaissance, which basically... Renaissance was Mermaid. Rescuers Down Under was part of it, just because it was in that same time period. But I don't think it was really part of it as far as the quality of them.
No. Beauty and the Beast,
Aladdin, Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback, Hercules, Mulan, Tarzan.
Yeah.
And also that was the movie side of it. TV side of the Disney Renaissance: DuckTales, Chippendales, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop, Bonkers, and Gargoyles.
Yeah, all cartoons I watched and loved. And even Gargoyles at the time, too, was a little darker than what Disney had done in the past, and it was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, they took notice of what he was doing, and they just rocked it. Yeah.
Like, okay, let's get some good quality stories, some good scripts, and yeah, they rocked it. Anyway, so all that being said, Secret of NIMH was the beginning of that, which led to the kind of whole Disney Renaissance and everything else indirectly, but it's a great movie.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because he worked for Disney and quit.
Yeah.
And left. And obviously there was probably some kind of discord there. And he went back and was like, I can do this and I can do it better. And Disney, he outdid him. He just outdid him. And that's awesome. I mean, I'm just saying for the time, they were like the go-to for kids' movies. And in the 80s, they just weren't. Like most of the 80s cartoons I grew up watching, I watched some Disney stuff. But like you said, it was when Little Mermaid came out. And
89.
They just started smashing it.
Yeah. And that continued, and I think Emperor's New Groove is kind of when the Renaissance is not considered part of the Renaissance, and that kind of probably different stories from there. But yeah, they dominated for about a good 10 years on that. Anyway, I said I love Secret of NIMH. It's a great kids movie. It's also a great book for kids to read. As far as it is a little darker, so maybe not the youngest of kids, but I think kids of most ages. I probably started watching when I was 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And I loved it ever since. But even as an adult, it's still an enjoyable movie to watch. The book is very readable, and I highly recommend it.
All right. Well, this was our Throwback Thursday choices for this week, and feel free to comment and tell us what you think. If you've seen the movies, any interesting facts that any of the fans might like to know that maybe we left out, go ahead and throw those comments on there, and thanks again for watching.
Also, if you think of any movies that you'd like to see us do for Throwback Thursday, feel free to throw them out. Might surprise you. All right. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.